from the station that's working for you. You're watching Fox 4 News at 9 a.m.
But first, you've been cleaning out those closets and cabinets. But does your love life need a little spring cleaning too? Coming up, keys to getting your relationship back on track. You're watching Fox 4 News at 9.
We'll do that. Thank you. And let's get you over to Stefan now.
Hey, thanks, guys. Well, do any of these words or phrases describe your relationship? On thin ice, overwhelmed, going down the drain? Well, perhaps you've lost that loving feeling, but it's not too late to save your love. Our guest this morning, Brian Hayden, is a licensed professional counselor and psychotherapist at Imago Therapy. Brian, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so a lot of couples out there are wondering, you know, where do they turn for help? How do they get back on the right track? But I think the first thing that they need to know is, when are they really in trouble? When's a relationship in trouble?
Well, I think couples know in their heart and in their gut. I mean, I think you just feel it. You feel distance. It can show up in the way that you communicate, a lack of communication, some retreat in intimacy. And so I think that people are very intuitive into their own needs, and they sense when there's a distance between this person that they love.
So what should they do from there?
Well, I think the first step is to acknowledge that you need some help. And vastly the number of people that come into my office need help with communicating, because what's being said by one and what's being heard by the other can be vastly different things. And so the biggest frustration that couples have is, he's not hearing me. She doesn't know where I'm coming from. And so admit that you need some help.
Okay, and once they admit to needing that help, you say, you know, that's the point where transformation really is near and some turnaround can really happen.
Right.
What happens from there?
Well, I think that we can only do what we know. And so we've all grown up in families where we were trained to see what love looks like. And so that's our skill set. And so for most of us, that is somewhat limited or one-sided. And so just to say that I need help in developing a skill set to attach to another person is important. Most people come in lost in reactivity. They get triggered, they shut down, they go into fight, flight, or freeze. And so the opposite of reactivity is intention. Their intention is to connect, but they're getting lost in their physical reactivity. I help them to interrupt that whole process.
And Brian, what about, you know, maintaining that friendship? That is certainly the foundation for many relationships, successful relationships. That's
one of the loveliest things that I get to do immediately with couples is to remind them. You know, one of the first things I ask is, how did you meet? You know, tell me about your first date. It immediately, you see the energy shift because they're reminded of a better time when they were connected and they loved one another and they didn't have all these problems. So it's important that I teach them that they can hold that love as well as the challenge that they have in redefining themselves and reconnecting.
Okay, and you know, sometimes when couples have been together for a certain amount of time, the power struggle comes into play. And you know, one couple or one partner wants this, the other wants that. How can they end that sort of struggle and reunite?
The power struggle is huge. And what we want to do, ultimately, this becomes a selfish endeavor. If I can learn to love you in the context of what you need versus what I think you need, I'm going to get you loving me back. And so it's very selfish. It's like, if I want more of you, I need to see you as a little girl, as a teenager. I need to see you as someone who's been hurt. I need to learn, how do I show up for this person so that I get everything that I need.
So it's about knowing your partner's language of love.
Absolutely. The man who trained me wrote a book called Getting the Love You Want. It's written by Harville Hendrix. It's a fabulous book. The type of therapy that I specialize in is called Imago Relationship Therapy. Imago means mirror image. And the theory is, I'm going to fall in love with someone who not only kind of reminds me of me, but who has similar pain as I do. Most importantly, though, I'm going to fall in love with someone that reminds me of my caretakers. Now, interestingly, I'm going to fall in love with someone who reminds me of the worst part of my caretakers.
Really?
Yeah.
The worst part?
It's ironic, but what I want to do is I want to revisit what was good, certainly, but I also want to master what wasn't. Because at the bottom of all of these problems that couples have are unmet childhood needs. They're showing up as conflict. You did that, you said this. If you get a little bit deeper, I'm angry, and I'm angry at you. Deeper still in the pyramid is, I'm sad and I'm fearful. But if we get way down to the bottom of what's feeding all conflict, it's, I'm afraid I'm never going to get my needs met. We want to meet one another's needs, we just don't know how.
Okay, and you just told us a little bit about, some of the negative feelings that couples can go through.
Yeah.
Is it easy to get over those feelings and move on to, a happy relationship?
Not necessarily easy, but it's possible.
Okay.
And it depends on where your wounding occurred. If I was wounded as a little child, it may take me a little bit longer to come to terms with some of that. It also may take me longer to access where this pain is coming from.
Okay.
Because a lot of times with couples, one person will say something, the other reacts in a way that the other partner will say, I have no idea where this is coming from.
Oh.
Well, it's attached to my experience,
Okay.
mostly in childhood.
Yeah. So it's also about empathy, like understanding your partner,
Huge.
where they're coming
It's
from.
about empathy, it's about validation, and it's about learning to show up in a way that's healing.
Okay.
Now, I don't claim that we can cartwheel into your existence and be everything you need. But certainly I can learn to love you in the way you need to be loved, and I can help to heal some of your pain.
Yeah.
And the more we do that, and the more that I know that there's one person on the planet that wants to show up for me in that way,
Okay.
I'll follow them all over the world.
All right.
And I'll be whatever they need for me to be.
Brian, some ways that couples can get back on the right track to having a healthy relationship. Again, this is Brian Hayden from Imago Therapy. Brian, thanks for sharing some time
Thank
with
you
us
so
this
much.
morning. It's now 9:25. Let's head back to Nick.